At 6:16 in Trinidad and Tobago, and it seems to be a somber mood for the Police Social and Welfare Association. And just to give you some context to this discussion that we're starting with this morning, Attorney General Reginald Armour says that the government is reviewing laws to make errant police officers pay for malicious prosecutions against members of the public. In response to a question from the opposition in Parliament regarding what legislative action, the AG stated that the matter is being worked on assiduously, and talks were concluded with the TTPS, the National Security Ministry, and the Police Complaints Authority. However, the president of the Police Association, acting ASP Gideon Dickson, and Vice President, also acting ASP Ishmael Pitt, here saying that to take that course of action would be unfair. They join us now to give their perspective. Gentlemen, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Acting ASP Dickson, if it is confirmed, if there is no doubt whatsoever that there's an example of malicious prosecution, that a police officer abused his authority to try to get somebody charged and jailed, shouldn't that officer have to pay the price? Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Fazil. Good morning to your viewership. It's an interesting question, but I just want to refer you to the data. There is very little data which suggests that this has continually happened. And if it does happen, we believe that it might be, and it will come out in evidence that the person would have gone against the grain of the organization, and he should be dealt with according to the law, as everyone else will be dealt with according to the law. The issue here isn't just about malicious prosecution. I would want to say that when you take it into context, we are looking at the law that provides protection for police officers, which is the under Section 808, the State Liability Act. We would want not singularly to take out police officers to treat with police officers in the execution of their duty. Look at all agencies that form part of the state apparatus. It shouldn't be you continually engaging and targeting the police officers to bring about whatever your desire. That we cannot accept. And then in this instance here, you speak of an attempt to change what exists in the law, but there's no consultation with the largest and most important stakeholder body, that is the Police Service Welfare Association, in relation to this matter. So these engagements, as far as we are concerned, cannot be in the best interest of the persons who serve.
Okay, so let me go to your colleague, the Vice President of the Association, acting ASP Ishmael Pitt. I take the point of your president that there would have to be a chain of responsibility, but if we're talking about where it is initiated, isn't it initiated by the police officer? And I also take the point about, from what he's saying, the absence of consultation with your association as far as this particular issue. But if we're talking about a case of malicious prosecution that might be verified or proved in a court matter that this was clearly a case of malicious prosecution, doesn't it begin with the involvement of the frontline police officer acting ASP Pitt? Good morning to you.
Pleasant morning, Fazil. Pleasant morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Straight out, if an officer is culpable and the evidence is clear that he or she is culpable, then I stand with my president that law should take its natural course and that officer should be held criminally liable. On the other hand, what we are looking at is a mechanism by which police officers, who would usually fall under the umbrella of the state regarding issues that persons would bring, whether they felt they were wronged, whether in fact, when the police officer was acting in good faith, they were in fact wronged, then if we take away that umbrella, what we are going to be doing is exposing our officers to a situation that kind of contradicts the very fiber of the terms and conditions of employment. I would simply put it this way. Judges err magistrates doctors politicians Fazir, you cannot single out the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service for this type of legislation, and you are failing to do so across the board. If it's across the board and we say, all right, this is the societal approach, no problem. But don't just single out the police.
Okay, well, could I jump in right there, Acting ASP? Could I jump in right, if you would allow me? And just to add to that, media people journalists all the time. So let's take it that. But we're not talking about an error. We're not talking about an error. We're talking about malicious intent. There's a difference between an error and malicious intent. Don't you agree?
Well, I agree, and that's why I said initially, Fazil, that if the officer did so and there's the evidence to support it, then he or she should be held accountable, criminally that is. And we have seen on numerous occasions, based on the different layers and agencies that we have to safeguard the behavior of police officers, that police officers have indeed been held accountable. So it's not a case of we are not holding our officers accountable, but what they are seeking to do at this stage is to have that civil situation fall or take away from the outside of the umbrella of the state and place it directly towards the officer. And there are numerous situations, because you may have a case of malicious prosecution, as broad as the term might be, and it could be that there was an error in judgment regarding the evidence that was being relied upon. It has happened in cases where even the DPP had to pull back matters because of the fact that they probably made errors in judgment. So why single out the police service to say this officer should be held accountable for making errors? If the officer did not make an error and there was a clear case of intent, then we are going along the lines of something criminal, then he or she should be held accountable. And there are several cases that we could rely on to show you that has been done, Fazil.
Okay, so Acting ASP Dickson, if I could bring you back into the discussion, therefore, it appears though, based on the information provided, unless we have committed an error in the media once again by talking about consultation with the TTPS, the National Security Ministry, and the Police Complaints Authority, it appears that this, again, from the way it's presented, has the blessing of your boss, the Acting Commissioner of Police.
I wouldn't want to go directly and state that, because it seems from what the media would have put out there is something which occurred since 2021. Discussions started since 2021. I'm not aware of it taking place in 2022, and I don't want to single out any commissioner at this point in time. What I would just want to say is simply this. The process of consultation is this is not a new thing. And if you are taking the persons who it affects the most into consideration, then at the onset, we should be involved in that consultation process. We are looking for transparency, we are looking for fairness, and we are deserving of it. As a matter of fact, the actions of those who are seeking to bring what they would deem to be betterment for the police, it is not appearing so to the man and the woman on the ground, on the beat serving, because we are being held to the highest threshold of integrity and morals and everything that is expected, and we are treated minuscule and at minimal basic, and that cannot be correct. So let's look at it. To enter the TTPS, effective from 2010, you had to have 5 O-levels, you have to do psychometric, you have to do medical, you have to do agility, you have to do polygraph. What is happening with our other institutions? Are they held to that threshold? When you look at presently, the law has evolved to the effect that persons could get bail for murder. You have officers who, in the execution of the duty, would have engaged and persons died, and our officers are languishing 10, 12 years now and cannot get bail. You look at situations that relates to our current salary status. We are in 2040. You look at the economy right now. Trinidad is under fire. crime is the biggest thing. You are treating us as the ordinary average person, offering the same, expecting the most. And it's almost like the David Rudder song, you know? What for we and you will set us free. You want to say everything you need to say, and when it's time to treat the police or the police supposed to be treated, we ain't seeing that. We are being pegged with everyone else, and this is becoming frustrating. It is only so long my officers could continue to operate under this professional guise and be treated as we are being treated. This must stop.
Okay, and therefore, if I could just get a perspective, gentlemen, before time runs out on us, we have a few minutes still left in our discussion that we could develop a few points. Acting ASP Pitt, given what we've heard from the Attorney General, because it came up in Parliament, and as we just heard from Acting ASP Dickson, this would have come up from last year, it might have been during the last few days of Gary Griffith as Commissioner of Police, and that's why there's not an intention to identify the present Acting Commissioner of Police, McDonald Jacob. But what can your association do to push back against it, Acting ASP Pitt?
Very, very good question. The reality is we are not going to stand for it, and we are going to challenge any means by which we are exposing our officers to something that we believe is not necessary under the circumstances. I will add to what my president was saying. Standards must not be convenient. You are, and I've heard them, they identified an international reference, more so Australia. But did we look at how the Australian police officers are compensated? Is it that when we are looking externally, we only look externally to put the police officers within a certain bracket and not look externally as to how officers are treated? We have recommendations. Our recommendations are simply this: make training continuous, provide the necessary tools consistently, so that it will minimize Fazil, the opportunity for police officers to err. In every regard, in every discipline, persons err. We see it daily, and you have just said it. Even journalists err. Why are you holding the police officer to that account when you are not doing it across the board? Standards must be seen generally, and it must not be looked upon just in one light. That is our position.
And Acting ASP Dickson, if I could just extend that same question to you, will you be looking for a dialogue with your Acting Commissioner of Police or someone else at the helm of the police service to get some clarity on this, or whether this was just usual parliamentary old talk just to quieten the opposition or to make them feel that the government doing something? Is there some substance to this? Will you be trying to get some more information from the authorities?
Yes, Wazir, we will. I've already instructed our secretary to pen a letter to the Attorney General in relation to this matter, to engage the Commissioner of Police before the end of the day to get a position in relation to this matter. And we will also pen something to the Minister of National Security. We believe as a responsible body, these things are necessary. We oftentimes hear things by the media, so we thank the media for the role that the media have been playing in relation to keeping us informed with several of these discussions that are taking place that impacts upon the police officer. But in the same breath, we cannot consistently be using the police as a soft target. It is happening for far too long, and it needs to stop. It needs to stop. We are a key stakeholder. Treat us as such. Give us the opportunity to be heard. Give us the opportunity to look at best practice, and best practice, as my colleague have indicated, it shouldn't be piecemeal best practice. We ought to be just like the Australians. Like the model they want to use, let us use the model thoroughly, not piecemeal.
Well, you know, ASP Dickson, you've given us an assignment, because I think the Attorney General referenced the Australian state of Victoria in referencing this legislation. So I think it's incumbent upon us now to find out what are the terms and conditions of officers in Victoria, Australia, and to see how they compare with how they are in Trinidad and Tobago. So we will see if we can get some detail in that regard. But finally, ASP Dickson, it does appear that your association is being treated, I mean, I want to use a more colorful term, but maybe scant courtesy is the best way that I could refer to it, because the wage negotiations, I think that your matter has gone to the industrial court as well. This issue, which clearly would have impact on police officers directly, from what you're saying, that you weren't even part of the discussion. What does that say about not just the political directorate, but the higher ranks of the police service or the national security, for example, and their regard for your association?
Let me make this clear. Oftentimes, persons misinterpret silence for weakness. The police service have been labeled in the past as the biggest gang. I don't know why. The history will bear us out. But we are as strong a body as any other institution in Trinidad and Tobago. And it is a craft right now to manage the expectations of the police officers on the ground and our delivery of service to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we want the authorities to know that they need to stop taking the police for granted. We are the law enforcers. There is laws near and far. We are the law enforcers. Stop taking the police for granted. We need to meet around the round table and do the reasonable and respectable thing in terms of bringing best for not just Trinidad and Tobago, but also for the police too. That's all I have to say this time, Fazil.
Acting ASP Dickson, Acting ASP Pitt, we thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to be with us this morning to bring some more context to this situation which came up in the Parliament a couple of days ago. And we thank you very much once again for taking the time to be with us this morning.